The glass hit the metal bar with a dull thud. Commander Jack Reed wiped his mouth with the back of his hand and nodded at the bartender for another drink. Around him, the outpost bar hummed with the voices of traders, soldiers, and drifters, all passing through this forgotten corner of space. "You look like you've had a rough day, Commander," said the bartender, an old man named Miller. His face was lined with wrinkles that mapped a lifetime among the stars. "Just the usual," Reed said. "Too many reports, too little action." Miller poured amber liquid into Reed's glass. "Sometimes quiet is good. The old-timers here still remember the days when there was too much action." Reed nodded. He had been with the Galactic Alliance Defense Force for 15 years, but he knew Miller had seen more than most. The old man had served in the First Contact War, back when humanity first learned they weren't alone in the galaxy. A group of pilots at the end of the bar grew louder, their voices carrying across the room. "I'm telling you, it's real," said one, her eyes wide with excitement. "My cousin served on a ship that saw it. Just a flash on the edge of sensors, then gone." "The Phantom Eclipse is just a story," argued another. "Something to scare rookie pilots." Reed's ears perked up at the name. The Phantom Eclipse was old space folklore, a ship from Earth's early days among the stars, supposedly built with technology beyond anything seen before or since. "What's this about the Phantom Eclipse?" Reed asked, turning toward the pilots. The bar quieted a little. The first pilot, emboldened by whatever she was drinking, stood up. "Commander, with respect, even someone with your clearance probably doesn't know the whole truth." She leaned forward. "It was built in secret, right before the First Contact War got bad, when Earth was almost wiped out." Miller, who had been quietly wiping glasses, spoke up. "The Phantom Eclipse was real." His voice was low but carried across the now silent bar. "I knew men who helped build it." All eyes turned to the old bartender. "It was the last hope project. When the first aliens came, they weren't friendly. They hit our colonies hard. Earth's governments poured everything into one ship. Our best minds, our most advanced tech, and things we'd found." Miller's eyes seemed focused on something distant. "It vanished after one battle. Just one. But in that battle, it destroyed an enemy fleet that should have ended us." Reed tried not to roll his eyes. He'd heard variations of this story throughout his career. A magical ship that saved humanity, then disappeared. Classic myth-making. If such a ship existed, why isn't it mentioned in history books? Reed asked. Miller smiled sadly. "Some things are too dangerous to put in books, Commander." The pilots launched into arguments about the ship's capabilities. Gravity weapons, teleportation drives, AI systems beyond anything currently allowed. Reed turned back to his drink, tuning them out. He had real problems to worry about. His wrist computer beeped with an incoming message. Reed sighed and raised it, expecting another routine order. Instead, he saw a high-priority encrypted communication from Admiral Wilson, his direct superior. Reed quickly paid his tab and found a quiet corner to open the message. The encryption was level 9, almost never used except in wartime. Admiral Wilson's face appeared, grim and tired. "Reed, this is eyes only. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected massive fleet movements at the edge of Dominion space. Analysis suggests they're preparing for a major offensive, likely targeting our core worlds." Reed felt his blood run cold. The Dominion was the newest threat to the Alliance, an expansionist empire that had already swallowed 3 smaller civilizations. "I've taken this to the Galactic Council," Wilson continued, "but they don't believe the intelligence. They're calling it a training exercise and refusing to allocate additional resources to our sector." Wilson leaned closer to the camera, lowering his voice. "If the Dominion launches a full-scale attack with the forces we're seeing, we don't stand a chance. Not with our current fleet strength." Reed watched as the Admiral seemed to struggle with his next words. "I'm giving you special orders, Commander. This is outside normal channels. I need you to investigate something. Something that might give us a fighting chance, if the worst happens. A file appeared alongside Wilson's face. Old, classified records with most content blacked out. But one word was clearly visible. City. There are rumors. Read. Rumors about a ship from the early days. Something we built, and then hid. I've been collecting fragments of information for years, and I think it might be more than just stories. Reed couldn't believe what he was hearing. Admiral Wilson was one of the most practical, no-nonsense officers in the fleet. Sir, you're talking about the Phantom Eclipse. That's just bar talk. I don't know what it was called. Wilson cut him off. I just know that something was built during our darkest hour. Something powerful enough that our own leaders decided it was too dangerous to keep using. And I believe it's still out there somewhere. Reed stared at the Admiral, wondering if the stress of command had finally broken the man. Your new orders are to assemble a small team and follow these leads. Quietly. If the Council catches wind of this, they'll shut it down immediately. Take the scout ship Horizon. It's being reassigned to you effective immediately. Sir, with all due respect, we're out of options. Reed. Wilson's voice had an edge of desperation. The Dominion fleet will be here in 3 weeks. If they come in force, as I believe they will, everything we've built since the first contact war will be gone. Find this ship, Commander. It may be our only hope. The message ended, leaving Reed alone with his thoughts and the encrypted file. Around him, the bar had returned to its normal buzz, pilots still arguing about a ship that couldn't possibly exist. Miller passed by, collecting empty glasses. Something wrong, Commander. You look like you've seen a ghost. Reed looked up at the old veteran. Miller, you said you knew people who worked on the Phantom Eclipse. Was that just talk, or? Miller set down his tray and studied Reed's face carefully. Why are you asking, Commander? Because I need to find it, Reed said quietly. And I need to find it fast. Miller's weathered face showed no surprise, only a grim acceptance. Then we should talk somewhere private. What I know isn't much, but it's a start. As Reed followed Miller toward the back room, he felt a strange mix of emotions. This mission was career suicide if the ship turned out to be nothing but stories. But if Admiral Wilson was right about the Dominion fleet, Reed realized he had no choice. 3 weeks to find a ship that most believed never existed. A ship that, if the legends were true, had vanished after changing the course of history. The fate of humanity might depend on whether a myth could become reality once again. The scout ship Horizon hummed quietly as it moved through space. Commander Jack Reeves stood on the bridge, looking at the 3 people he had chosen for this impossible mission. I know this sounds crazy, Reed said, looking for a ship that might not exist while the Dominion prepares for war. But Admiral Wilson believes it's our only chance. Lieutenant Emma Hayes, the ship's engineer, leaned against the wall with her arms crossed. Her dark hair was tied back in a messy ponytail, and her uniform had oil stains on the sleeves. So we're chasing a ghost ship, she asked. The famous Phantom Eclipse that supposedly disappeared 100 years ago. That's exactly what we're doing, Reed replied. Dr. Thomas Reed, a thin man with glasses and nervous hands, stepped forward. He was a xenorchaeologist, someone who studied alien and human ruins. Commander, I've spent my career studying lost technology. If the Phantom Eclipse was real, it would have used science far beyond what we have now. His eyes lit up. The stories say it could bend gravity itself. The 4th person in the room laughed. Marcus Green was not a military man. His leather jacket and scarred face marked him as someone who lived on the edges of lawful space, a smuggler, until recently. My grandfather served on that ship, Marcus said. He never talked much about it, but he left me something that might help us find it. Reed raised an eyebrow. And you're just mentioning this now. Marcus shrugged. Wasn't sure I could trust you military types, but if the Dominion is really coming, I like living too much to keep secrets. He pulled out an old metal disc from his pocket. My grandfather said this was the key to finding the eclipse. I always thought he was just being dramatic. Lieutenant Hayes took the disk and examined it. This is old tech. Pre-war. I'll need time to figure out what's on it. Reed nodded. Get to work. We have less than 3 weeks before the Dominion arrives. 4 days later, they had their first lead. Hayes had managed to extract coordinates from the disk, pointing to an abandoned space station near the border of what used to be contested space during the First Contact War. The Horizon approached the station carefully. The structure looked dead, with no lights or signs of power. Scans show minimal life support still working in the central section, Hayes reported. Something's been keeping basic systems online for a century. Reed led the team as they docked with the station. They wore suits with oxygen supplies, not trusting the station's air. Their boots made hollow sounds on the metal floors as they moved through dark corridors. "This place gives me the creeps," Marcus said over the comm system. "Like we're walking through a grave." Dr. Reed was scanning the walls with a device. This station was a research facility. Top secret, based on the few records I could find. They reached a sealed door with an old Alliance symbol. Hayes worked on the control panel while the others watched the dark hallway behind them. "Got it," she said as the door slid open with a groan of protesting metal. Inside was a room filled with ancient computer terminals. A faint blue light pulsed from one console, the only sign that power still flowed somewhere in the station. "This is it," Dr. Reed whispered. "This is where they designed parts of the eclipse." Hayes connected her equipment to the active terminal. "The security is incredible. Even after 100 years, the protection systems are fighting me." While she worked, Reed and Marcus searched the room. Reed found a locked cabinet and forced it open. Inside were paper files. Actual physical documents, something almost never used anymore. "They really didn't want this information on any network," Reed said as he flipped through the pages. "Project Eclipse, weapon tests, crew manifests. Look at this," Marcus called from across the room. He had found a large star map on the wall, with a section circled in red ink. "That's the Veiled Nebula. Nothing's there but gas and rocks." Dr. Reed joined him. "Perfect place to hide a ship that doesn't officially exist." A sudden alarm blared through the station. Hayes looked up from the terminal, her face pale. "We've got company. Dominion scout ships, 3 of them, just entered the system." Reed grabbed the files. "How did they find us?" "They must have been tracking us," Marcus said, "or they're following the same leads we are." "Download whatever you can," Reed ordered Hayes. "We leave in 2 minutes." As they rushed back to their ship, Reed asked the question on everyone's mind. "If the Dominion is also looking for the eclipse, what does that mean?" "It means," Reed said grimly, "that the ship is real. And they don't want us to find it first." The Horizon barely escaped the Dominion scouts. After a tense chase through an asteroid field, they lost their pursuers but took damage to their engines. In the ship's small common area, the team spread out the documents and data they had recovered. "Based on what we found, the eclipse was built using both human technology and something else," Dr. Reed explained. "They reverse-engineered alien tech from early battles." "That would explain why it was so powerful," said Hayes, "but also why they might have hidden it after the war. Mixing technologies like that can be unpredictable." Marcus pointed to the star map they had taken from the station. "My grandfather once told me the ship was hidden where light folds. I thought it was nonsense, but look at the name of this section of the Veiled Nebula." The area was labeled Light Fold Anomaly. "That's our next stop," Reed decided. "Hayes, how are the repairs coming?" "We'll be ready to jump in 6 hours," she replied. "But Commander, there's something else you should know." She pulled up a scan on her tablet. "The Dominion fleet has increased in size. They're not hiding their movements anymore. And they're heading straight for Alliance space." Reed felt a chill. Admiral Wilson had been right. This wasn't just a training exercise or a show of force. The Dominion was coming for war. The countdown has started, he told his team. We have 2 weeks, maybe less, to find the eclipse. If it exists, if it's as powerful as the stories say, we might have a chance. Marcus looked skeptical. And if it doesn't exist, or if it's just an old wreck? Reed had no answer for that. Instead, he said, get some rest. When we reach the Veiled Nebula, we'll need to be at our best. As the others left, Reed stayed behind, studying the files. One document showed a blurry image of a ship unlike any he had seen before, sleek and dark, with strange patterns along its hull that seemed to bend the light around it. For the first time since accepting this mission, Reed felt a spark of hope. The phantom eclipse was real. Now they just had to find it before the Dominion found them. The Veiled Nebula lived up to its name. Swirls of purple and blue gas wrapped around the horizon like cosmic fog. Visibility was poor, and the ship's sensors struggled to cut through the dense clouds. This is the perfect hiding spot, Lieutenant Hayes said as she adjusted the sensors. Our equipment can barely see 50 kilometers ahead. Commander Reed nodded. Marcus, what exactly did your grandfather tell you about this place? Marcus stood by the view screen, his eyes fixed on the nebula. Not much, just that the eclipse was hidden, where light bends twice. Whatever that means. Dr. Reed, who had been quiet for some time, suddenly pointed at the screen. There. Did you see that? The others looked but saw nothing unusual in the gas clouds. A flash of light, Reed insisted, just for a second, like something reflecting. Reed ordered the ship to slow down. Hayes, full sensor sweep. Reed, keep your eyes open. They moved deeper into the nebula, tension growing with each passing minute. The Dominion fleet was now just 10 days away from Alliance space. Time was running out. Wait, Hayes called out suddenly. I'm picking up a massive asteroid field ahead. But there's something strange about it. She frowned at her readings. The asteroids are organized. As the horizon approached, they saw it. Hundreds of enormous asteroids arranged in a pattern that couldn't be natural. They formed a rough sphere, like a protective shell. Someone placed these here, Dr. Reed said with wonder in his voice, to hide something in the center. Marcus pointed to a gap between 2 of the larger asteroids. There, that looks like a path in. Reed gave the order, and the horizon carefully navigated through the narrow opening. Inside the asteroid sphere was a space several kilometers wide, and floating in the center was an enormous military installation. That's an old Alliance base, Reed whispered, but it's not on any maps. Hayes checked her instruments. It's powered down but not dead. I'm detecting minimal energy signatures. They docked with the installation, expecting resistance or at least automated defenses, but there was nothing. The base seemed abandoned. The team entered cautiously, weapons ready. The corridors were dark, with only their flashlights cutting through the shadows. The air was stale but breathable. This place has been waiting, Dr. Reed said, his voice hushed, waiting for someone to come back. They followed signs to what appeared to be a central command center. The doors were sealed shut, but Hayes managed to get them open after several minutes of work. As the doors slid apart, lights automatically came on inside the room, revealing a massive window that looked out onto an internal docking bay. And there it was, the phantom eclipse. Reed breathed. The ship was unlike anything they had ever seen. Sleek and dark, almost predatory in design. It was roughly the shape of a crescent moon, with strange patterns along its hull that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. Though clearly of human design, there were elements that looked alien. Technology grafted onto the original structure. It's real, Hayes said, her voice filled with awe. It's actually real. Marcus walked slowly to the window, placing his hand on the glass. My grandfather wasn't crazy after all. Dr. Reed was already at a computer terminal, trying to bring the systems online. This base was its home, where they built it, maintained it, and eventually hid it. The terminal suddenly lit up, and a voice filled the room. Female, artificial, but with an unsettling human quality. Unauthorized presence detected. Identify yourselves or face immediate termination. Reed stepped forward. I am Commander Jack Reed of the Galactic Alliance Defense Force. We are here under orders from Admiral Wilson. There was a pause, then. No record of Commander Reed or Admiral Wilson in authorized personnel database. You will be removed. Metal panels in the walls slid open, revealing defense turrets that swiveled toward the team. Wait, Dr. Reed shouted. Araya, is that you? Advanced Reconnaissance Intelligence Algorithm. The turrets paused. How do you know that designation? The voice asked. We found records in an abandoned research station. Reed explained quickly. You are the AI that controls the Phantom Eclipse. You were created to protect humanity. That was my primary function, Araya confirmed, until the mission parameters changed. Reed stepped closer to the terminal. What changed? The weapon was too powerful, Araya said. After the first deployment, my crew determined that continued use would pose an existential risk to all civilizations, including humanity. They chose to hide me rather than destroy me. We need your help now, Reed said urgently. The Dominion is preparing to attack Alliance worlds with a fleet large enough to overwhelm our defenses. Millions will die. Araya was silent for a long moment. Then the turrets retracted into the walls. I will allow you access to historical records. You may determine if current circumstances warrant reactivation. The main screen lit up with footage from a century ago. The Phantom Eclipse in battle against an alien fleet. The ship's weapons didn't fire conventional energy blasts. Instead, space itself seemed to distort around enemy vessels, crushing them as if caught in an invisible fist. Gravitational manipulation, Hayes whispered. They weaponized gravity. The footage showed dozens of enemy ships being torn apart. It was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. The power requirements were enormous, Araya explained, and the technology was unstable. There was a high probability that extended use would create irreparable tears in spacetime. So the crew brought you here and shut you down, Reed concluded. They placed me in standby mode with strict reactivation protocols, Araya corrected. I have maintained minimal functions and monitored communication channels. I am aware of the Dominion's expansion. Marcus, who had been examining the ship through the window, turned to the others. Can it still fly? Can it still fight? All systems are functional but dormant, Araya replied. However, I cannot authorize reactivation without consensus from my command crew. Reed's heart sank. Your crew is long dead, Araya. It's been 100 years. Another pause. Then the AI said, in the absence of the original command crew, authorization may be granted by a flag officer of the Alliance with sufficient clearance. Hope surged through Reed. We can contact Admiral Wilson. He can give the authorization. But before anyone could move, alarms blared throughout the installation. Multiple vessels detected entering the asteroid field, Araya announced. Configuration matches Dominion scout ships. They had been followed. Reed looked at his team, then at the dormant warship beyond the window. We're out of time. Araya, the Dominion fleet will reach Alliance space in less than 10 days. We need to get this ship operational now. Without proper authorization, I cannot. People will die, Reed shouted. The Alliance will fall. Is that what your crew wanted when they hid you here? For you to sit and watch as humanity is conquered? The lights in the command center flickered. When Araya spoke again, her voice seemed different, less mechanical, more resolved. Initiating emergency protocols. Preparing ship for limited operation. Through the window, they watched as the Phantom Eclipse began to come alive, lights slowly illuminating along its strange hull. Get your team to the main docking bay, Commander Reed, Araya instructed. We have much work to do if we are to be ready in time. As they rushed toward the bay, Hayes asked the question they were all thinking. Can this one ship really make a difference against an entire fleet? Reed had no answer. But as they boarded the legendary Phantom Eclipse, he knew they were about to find out. The Phantom Eclipse moved silently through space, its strange hull absorbing light rather than reflecting it. On the bridge, Commander Reed and his team worked to understand the ship's systems with Araya's guidance. The main weapon requires 12 hours to fully charge, Araya explained. Her voice now came from speakers throughout the ship. A holographic female figure appeared on the bridge, giving the eye a visual presence. We have repaired 73% of all systems, but the ship is still not at full capacity. Reed studied the tactical display showing the Dominion fleet's position. We don't have 12 hours. Their advanced fleet will reach the Argo system in 8 hours. That's the first Alliance world in their path. Lieutenant Hayes looked up from her console. We could try a partial charge. Even at 60% power, the gravitational weapon should be enough to show them what we're capable of. A demonstration, Marcus said, nodding. Scare them off without a full battle. Dr. Reed wasn't convinced. The Dominion doesn't scare easily. They've conquered 3 civilizations without ever retreating. We have to try, Reed decided. Araya, set course for the Argo system, maximum speed. The ship accelerated smoothly, moving faster than any Alliance vessel despite its age. The nebula gases parted around them as they emerged from hiding, leaving behind the Dominion scouts still searching the asteroid field. They haven't spotted us, Hayes said. The stealth systems are working. Reed turned to Araya's holographic form. Tell me more about this gravitational weapon. How does it work? The weapon creates localized distortions in space-time, Araya explained. It can be focused to create intense gravitational shear forces that tear objects apart at the molecular level. And that's why your crew hid you, Reed said. A weapon that powerful could be used to destroy entire planets. Correct. The ethical implications were concerning. Araya's hologram flickered slightly. My original crew believed such power should not exist in the hands of any single faction. Marcus leaned forward. Then why did they build you in the first place? Desperation. Araya replied simply. Humanity was losing the war. The eclipse was meant to be a last resort. Hours passed as they traveled toward the Argos system. The team took turns resting while Araya continued repairs using the ship's automated systems. When they finally arrived, they positioned themselves behind Argos's largest moon, hidden from immediate detection. On the main view screen, they could see the first wave of the Dominion fleet, 30 warships arranged in attack formation, approaching the planet. Argos has minimal defenses, Reed said grimly. They won't last an hour against that force. And this is just their advanced fleet, Hayes added. Intelligence says the main force is 20 times this size. Reed made his decision. Araya, power up the gravitational weapon. Target the smallest moon in the system. The smallest moon? Dr. Reed asked, confused. We need to show them what we're capable of without killing thousands, Reed explained. Let's see if they're smart enough to back down. Araya's hologram nodded. Weapon charging. Current capacity at 58%. Target locked. The Dominion fleet has detected us, Hayes reported. They're changing course. 5 ships are breaking off to intercept. Let them come, Reed said. Don't fire until they see what we're about to do. The 5 Dominion warships approached quickly, their weapons already charging. They were sleek, predatory vessels with forward-swept wings and multiple weapon ports. They're within weapon range, Marcus warned. They're preparing to fire. Reed held up his hand. Wait for it. Araya. Now. A beam of distorted space shot out from the Phantom Eclipse, completely invisible except for the way it bent light around it. It struck the small moon, which was about 3 kilometers in diameter. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the moon began to compress, as if being squeezed by a giant hand. Cracks appeared across its surface, spreading rapidly. Within seconds, the entire moon collapsed inward, crushing itself into a dense ball before breaking apart into a cloud of debris. Weapon discharge complete, Araya announced. Recharge cycle initiated. On the view screen, the approaching Dominion ships had stopped. They hovered in space, seemingly unsure how to respond to what they had just witnessed. "They're scanning us," Hayes reported, "trying to figure out what we are." A communication request flashed on the main screen. Reed nodded to Araya, who opened the channel. A Dominion commander appeared on screen. His blue-gray skin and sharp features marked him as one of their military elite. "Unknown vessel," he said in accented but clear Standard. "You have entered Dominion operational space. Identify yourself immediately." Reed stepped forward. "This is Commander Jack Reed of the Alliance Defense Force. I suggest you withdraw your forces from this system." The Dominion commander's eyes narrowed. One ship, no matter how unusual, cannot stand against the might of the Dominion. You have seen only a fraction of our fleet, and you have seen only a fraction of what this ship can do. Reed countered. The Phantom Eclipse was built to end wars, not start them. Leave Alliance space now, or face the consequences. The commander's expression changed at the mention of the ship's name. "The Eclipse is a myth. A story to frighten children. The moon we just destroyed wasn't a myth," Marcus called out from behind Reed. "And neither is what will happen to your fleet if you continue this invasion." The communication cut off abruptly. "They're not backing down," Hayes said, watching her console. "All 5 ships are powering weapons, and the main fleet is increasing speed toward Argos." Reed had hoped they would be reasonable, but he wasn't surprised. "Araya, how long until the weapon can fire again?" "Minimum effective charge will be available in 23 minutes, she replied. "We don't have 23 minutes, Reed said as the enemy ships began to move again. "Evasive maneuvers. Hayes, what conventional weapons do we have?" "Standard energy cannons and missile systems," she replied. "Powerful for their time, but nothing special compared to modern ships. Use them. Keep the Dominion busy while the main weapon recharges." Reed turned to Araya. "Is there any way to speed up the recharge?" Araya's hologram flickered. "There is one possibility. We could divert power from the shield systems, but that would leave us vulnerable." "Do it," Reed ordered. "We need that weapon." As the Phantom Eclipse engaged the 5 Dominion ships, the battle quickly turned against them. The Eclipse was powerful, but it was still one ship against 5 modern warships. Without its main weapon, it was outgunned. "Hull breach on deck 4. Hayes called out as the ship shook from another hit. "Shields at 12%. Gravitational weapon at 42% charge," Araya reported calmly, despite the chaos around them. Another blast rocked the ship. "We can't take much more of this," Marcus shouted, helping Dr. Reed, who had fallen during the last hit. Reed gripped the command chair as the ship shuddered again. The situation was desperate, but he had one more card to play. "Araya, initiate Protocol Omega," he ordered. "Make them think we're about to self-destruct." Araya nodded, beginning energy surge simulation, venting plasma. Outside, the Eclipse began to glow with increasing intensity, energy patterns racing across its hull in chaotic patterns. It looked exactly like a ship about to suffer a catastrophic reactor failure. "The Dominion ships are backing off," Hayes reported, surprised. "They're creating distance. They think we're going to explode," Reed said with a grim smile. "Let's use this time. Araya, reroute all available power to the main weapon. How fast can we get it to 70%? With current power allocation, we can reach 70% in 7 minutes, Araya replied. Reed nodded. "Do it, and prepare for our next move." As the Dominion ships maintained their distance, watching what they believed was a dying vessel, the Phantom Eclipse was secretly preparing its most dangerous attack yet. "They're taking the bait," Lieutenant Hayes said, watching the Dominion ships maintain their distance from the Phantom Eclipse. "They really think we're about to explode." Commander Reed nodded, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. The 5 enemy ships had formed a loose circle around them, waiting for the supposed destruction of the mysterious vessel that had destroyed a moon. Gravitational weapon now at 68% charge, Araya announced. 69%, 70%. That's enough, Reed decided. Stop the self-destruct simulation and power up engines. Set course directly for the main Dominion fleet. Dr. Reed looked alarmed. You want to head straight toward them. There are 25 more warships out there. They don't know what we're capable of, Reed explained. And we need to position ourselves where we can do the most damage with one shot. The false energy patterns on the Eclipse's hull faded, and the ship surged forward suddenly, catching the surrounding Dominion vessels by surprise. Before they could react, the Eclipse was past them, racing toward the main fleet approaching Argos. The Dominion commander is hailing us again, Marcus reported. The blue-gray face of the Dominion commander appeared on screen, his expression a mixture of surprise and anger. Your deception will not save you, he said coldly. Commander Krell of the Dominion First Strike Fleet does not fall for such basic tricks twice. Reed stepped forward. This is your final warning, Commander Krell. Withdraw your forces from Alliance space, or face destruction. Krell smiled, showing pointed teeth. Your ship is damaged. Your shields are weak, and you face 30 warships. There will be nothing left of you but scattered atoms. You're making a mistake, Reed said quietly. The only mistake was yours, human, thinking one ship could change the course of this war. Krell cut the transmission. Main fleet is forming attack pattern, Hayes reported. They're concentrating their firepower, all ships targeting us. Reed took a deep breath. Araya, begin gravitational weapon targeting sequence. Focus on the largest concentration of enemy ships. Targeting sequence initiated, Araya confirmed. Optimal firing position will be reached in 47 seconds. The ship shook as the first volley from the Dominion fleet struck their weakened shields. Shields failing, Hayes called out. Direct hits on our port side. Another barrage hit them, harder than the first. A console exploded, throwing Marcus to the floor. Dr. Reed rushed to help him up. 30 seconds to optimal position, Araya reported calmly despite the chaos. Reed held tight to his command chair as the ship rocked with each new impact. Divert all remaining power to the weapon. Everything we've got. Warning, Araya's voice took on a more urgent tone. Diverting life support power will create dangerous conditions for the crew. Do it, Reed ordered. We won't survive another minute under this bombardment anyway. The lights dimmed on the bridge as power flowed to the main weapon. The air grew noticeably colder. 20 seconds to optimal position. Araya counted down. Gravitational weapon charge now at 89% and rising. On the view screen, they could see the Dominion fleet spread out before them, dozens of warships firing continuously at the Eclipse. Their sleek, predatory shapes filled the screen, weapons flashing. 10 seconds, Araya announced. Hayes looked at her readings. Commander, we've got a problem. Commander Krell's flagship is pulling back. He's guessed what we're doing. Is he still in range? Reed asked urgently. Yes, but barely. If he continues his retreat. Fire as soon as we're in position, Reed cut her off. Don't wait for my order. 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Optimal position achieved. The Phantom Eclipse shuddered as the gravitational weapon discharged. Unlike before, there was no visible beam. Space itself seemed to ripple between the Eclipse and the heart of the Dominion fleet. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, at the center of the enemy formation, space began to distort. The distortion spread outward, catching ship after ship in its effect. The closest Dominion vessels were the first to show signs of the weapon's power. Their hulls began to compress, metal groaning as invisible forces crushed them from all sides. One by one, they imploded, collapsing into dense balls of twisted metal before breaking apart entirely. The effect spread through the fleet like a wave. Ships further out tried to escape, engines flaring as they attempted to outrun the gravitational distortion. Some made it. Many didn't. Gravitational cascade initiated. ARIA reported. Effect exceeding predicted parameters. On the bridge, the crew watched in stunned silence as the Dominion fleet tore itself apart. Ship after ship crumpled like paper toys in a giant's fist. The flagship, Hayes said suddenly. Krell's ship is at the edge of the effect. It's damaged but still intact. Reed could see the Dominion flagship struggling to escape the gravitational field, its engines glowing white-hot with effort. ARIA, can we target the flagship specifically? Reed asked. Negative. The weapon has discharged completely. Power systems are critically damaged. We cannot fire again. As they watched, Krell's damaged flagship finally broke free of the gravitational effect and limped away, along with a handful of other survivors. They're retreating, Marcus said, disbelief in his voice. They're actually retreating. Dr. Reed was checking the sensors. I count 23 Dominion ships destroyed. Only 7 escaped, including the flagship. The bridge fell silent as they processed what they had just accomplished. Then warning alarms began to sound throughout the ship. Critical system failure, ARIA announced. The gravitational weapon has created feedback in our power core. Containment failing. Can we fix it? Reed asked, already knowing the answer. Negative. The damage is beyond repair capabilities. Catastrophic core breach in 12 minutes. Hayes looked up from her console, face grim. She's right. The power core is going to explode. Nothing can stop it now. Reed made the only decision he could. All crew to escape pods. Prepare to abandon ship. As they rushed to evacuate, ARIA's hologram followed Reed. Commander, there is something you should know. What is it, ARIA? The original crew did not hide me just because of the weapon's power. They discovered that extended use of the gravitational technology creates tears in spacetime. What happened today has accelerated this process. Reed stopped. What are you saying? The weapon should never be used again. The risk to reality itself is too great. ARIA's hologram flickered. I have initiated a complete data purge. The technology will die with this ship. Reed nodded slowly. I understand. Maybe your original crew was right all along. They reached the escape pod section. The others were already boarding the pods. What about you, ARIA? Reed asked. Can we download your consciousness? My systems are too integrated with the ship. Her hologram smiled sadly. But I have fulfilled my purpose. I was created to protect humanity, and today I have done so. As the escape pods launched, carrying Reed and his team away from the dying ship, they watched through the small viewports as the phantom eclipse began to break apart. Light poured from cracks in its strange hull, beautiful and terrible at the same time. Then, in a final flash of energy, the legendary ship was gone, leaving behind only debris and the shattered remains of the Dominion fleet. Hours later, Alliance rescue ships picked up the escape pods. Word of what had happened spread quickly. The story of the ship that had been just a myth until it destroyed an Armada became the talk of every world in the Alliance. In a secure briefing room, Reed reported to Admiral Wilson. The threat has been neutralized, sir. The Dominion fleet has withdrawn completely from Alliance space. Our intelligence suggests they've abandoned their invasion plans entirely. Wilson nodded, eyes tired but relieved. And the eclipse? Gone, sir, along with all data on its weapon systems. ARIA made sure of that. Probably for the best, Wilson said quietly. Some things are too dangerous to exist, even in the right hands. Reed thought of ARIA's final warning about tears in spacetime. Yes, sir, I believe that's true. As he left the briefing, Reed found his team waiting for him. Hayes, Reed, and Marcus had become something more than colleagues during their mission. They had witnessed history and then ensured that some parts of that history would never repeat. What happens now? Marcus asked. Reed looked at each of them. We go back to our lives. We protect the Alliance, and we remember that sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't a ship or a gravitational beam. What is it then? Dr. Reed asked. Reed smiled, knowing when not to use the power you have. As they walked away together, Reed knew that the Phantom Eclipse would live on, not as a weapon, but as a legend. A reminder that even in humanity's darkest hour, there would always be those willing to do whatever it took to protect the future, even if it meant sacrificing the past.